Of the big three, Sony is absolutely the console manufacturer and platform that people love to hate the most. And whether you love them or hate them, there's actually a lot in the news to highlight. More or less, there'll be something for you. If it's schadenfreude or genuine joy at the platform, there's a lot to talk about because Herman Hulst, PlayStation Studios chief, has recently done a press tour. He outlined the future, and of course, he didn't talk about some of the things that are going a little bit wrong behind the scenes. The big takeaways from this press tour is that Sony will be waiting at least a year to port their titles from PlayStation to PC. With the exception of live services, they will all be same-day releases because, of course, you want that big explosive release. You want as many people into the funnel so they can just become payers as quick as possible. Part of the reasoning for that delay, of course, it's just a double dip, right? Everyone knows that's kind of the point. It's, oh yeah, you got this on PlayStation. Not for everyone, of course, because people won't have both. But the idea is very simple that you go, oh yeah, hey, here's a new marketing way for this game a year later. Well, it's still relevant, but also there's something new and exciting about it. And that's something that Stephen Totilo actually pointed out. It's not just Spider-Man. Here's how 4 games shot up the US sales chart when they were ported to PC. And that was Horizon Zero Dawn, Days Gone, God of War, and Spider-Man. They all shot up from like 89, 247, 146, 84, all the way up to the charts for like 12, 20, 5, 3. Full on just, these have a new lease of life. It's not going to be quite the same as a release, but it's still a kind of crazy level of, hey, this game is in the cultural consciousness again. And for a single player title like Sony's, stuff like that is going to be so vital to their business. But it's also kind of fine for PC gamers because a year's not that long, right? That's the kind of thing we're getting used to now, especially as games last longer. Because I remember like back in the day, it used to be you'd get a game and a year from then the design space would have changed drastically, trends would have changed, you know, tech would have come a decent way. But now we're hitting that level where because of scalability on the PC approach, something like Spider-Man now, and you know, the original Spider-Man is getting quite old, but it is genuinely still like one of the better games on the entire platform that you could play. So we're at that level where it kind of works for everyone. That year wait, we get the best of both worlds in a sense. Especially when it comes to the ports, right? Because Nixie's ports to PC, as well as what Santa Monica did for God of War, were actually really, really damn good. The good news is that none of the like, hey, we're going to get this PC porting on the go, we're going to bring to PC. None of like the fact that they're going to continue to make games for PS4 when appropriate, or even the fact that they're building internal mobile teams. None of that's going to take away from their prestige single player titles. It will never be at the expense. As Hurst literally said to Axios, some of our biggest titles in the single player narrative driven space are also our most profitable titles. Which is, of course, because that's where all of your money is going at the minute. So we do have to get into live services. We do have to get into that. But at least they know that they won't pivot to that. They'll just try to go, I guess it's like the vertical integration, right? It's a vertical expansion, the kind of, hey, what if we get all of our current wins with God of War, with Spider-Man, with, you know, Spider-Man 2 coming up, with Wolverine coming up, with whatever Guerrilla's working on coming up. That'll be great. But they also need to work in live services because, of course they do. Everyone's doing it. Why not? If you want some schadenfreude on Sony's failings, you'll have to wait a little bit longer. Now we have to talk about their actual plans for live services. And Jim Ryan in 2022 laid it all out in the segment briefing, where the plan has been for live service investment to reach 49% of Sony's total by the end of fiscal year 22, which will be March 31st, 23. That's when fiscal year 22 ends, with an aim to have 3 live service titles under their belt. And they're not quite there yet, but we'll get to that. They have an intent for 12 Sony Interactive Entertainment live service games by the end of fiscal year 25, which is really aggressive, and you wonder how you're going to even have 12 live service titles. But you think about Sony's overall layout and PlayStation's overall layout, and they're not going to be going for the approach of Ubisoft where they want 7 live services or 20 or 500 of them that are all the same genre and competing with each other. Sony is more liable to go for, hey, can we get a live service for this genre? Can we get a live service for this IP? Just in the same sense that, you know, we think of live service and we think of shooters, because for some reason the game industry is extremely creatively bankrupt and only goes for shooters a lot of the time. But there are a lot of live services that are kind of more the Rocket League kind of thing. I know it's not doing exceedingly well, but like Knockout City for EA, those are live services. So there's room for this to be kind of interesting, especially with Hulse saying to Axios that they won't all be original IP. They're not excluding bringing some of their beloved existing franchises into live games. It does raise the problem of what are you going to do to the IP that we care for? Because obviously that's one of the problems that PlayStation have had with so many IP that they're sitting on going, well, we can't really make a God of War out of Sly Cooper. I guess you're wondering then, what are you going to do to that? Are we going to have a live service Ape Escape? because that will completely miss the point of what people actually want from those IPs. But the fact that they're kind of blending original IP and existing stuff is kind of okay. You're not just going to be completely creatively bankrupt around this. You're going to give it a try at least. So hopefully that bears out well. As for their existing live services, and this one's kind of weird, right? You wouldn't expect it, but Bungie, because they bought Bungie, they kind of have Destiny now. That's their live service title. So that might be one of the three they're talking about. And then their second is, and you probably, maybe you have played it, but you likely haven't even thought about it. And that's MLB The Show 22. It's not quite to the same level as EA's FIFA and stuff like that, but it is like they have like a studio, I think it's a San Diego studio, who just make MLB The Show. They made that for years. And everyone who plays it, I know there's Matt Piscatella, the analyst for MPD. I think he's the CEO or some like chair of MPD, the organization that does all like the game like sales analytics. And he talks about it all the time. And it seems to be like a really well executed thing. It's just not for core gamers in the same sense that like a Destiny would be. So that's their second live service. And as for the third, we're getting kind of close to the end of the fiscal year and we don't know what it is. The only possible one that we were thinking of is Deviation Games, and that was a bunch of the ex-Treyarch people who were going to go, hey, basically, do you want to make a Call of Duty for PlayStation? And they'll fund you forever to do so. But as we'll get into in a little bit, that hasn't gone so well. So we have to look kind of elsewhere. And Eurogamer have actually compiled this really nicely for us. But Bungie have a franchise that's codenamed Matter. It's not a PlayStation exclusive, but that doesn't mean it won't count as a live service on PlayStation in the same way MLB The Show is on Xbox, because that's the thing with a live service, right? If you're selling a first-party narrative game, you want that to bring people to your platform so you can make money elsewhere. That's why you'll never see like God of War Ragnarok on Xbox. But for live services, why not? Because the live service is the one that's actually making the money a lot of the time. There are platform benefits. I mean, I'm sure obviously, having like exclusive Fortnite would be great, and that's a live service. They're as games to make money instead of this kind of will spend loads of money to advertise and bring people to our platform that some of the first party super big narrative games are like. The other game it could be then is Naughty Dog's multiplayer standalone Last of Us, but that seems to be kind of missing. And then there was that weird thing where, the fact that they re-released Last of Us Part 1 there, or remastered or remade it, whatever the hell that actually classifies as, because it's all very blurry these days. But that came from Naughty Dog not having anything to do project-wise. At least that's what we've heard internally. We've heard that Naughty Dog were kind of going, well, we don't really have a project that's finished pre-production. Shit, could look like a massive team of artists, and we can't just pay them to do nothing. So go fix The Last of Us Part 1. So it might be the Naughty Dog multiplayer standalone, but you would expect us to hear that a little bit sooner. There's more info to come in 2023, so maybe that'll be like a late March thing, or maybe they'll be happy to push it on. Another game is actually the Twisted Metal project that seems to be at Firesprite, and that's the thing where I don't know how well it would work today. As a live service multiplayer car combat game, that might more or less work kind of fine, actually. You look at Rocket League, right? You look at Rocket League, and then you go, what if this were less esportsy? What if this were a little bit more I guess the Twisted Metal aesthetic, just carnage, flames, wreckage? That might work, especially because no one at EA has any sort of inclination to rebuild Burnout anytime soon. There might be room for that, but I don't know how well that would work versus... I mean, this is it, right? You just fall back to the old... Would that work for a big live service, or would you just rather have a good shooter instead? If you look at EA making Wild Hearts and you go, hey, they're just making Monster Hunter because Monster Hunter's doing really well, and they'll probably maybe live service a little bit. There may be potential for that in what Guerrilla have been doing, because they've been hiring a load of ex-Rainbow Six Siege staff over the past few years, and it's been around the live service and online functionality element of it. And obviously, recently we saw the leak of the Horizon co-op game, which was, hey, it's Horizon, you co-op, you kill big monsters. So you can see how that would work. And if you don't think Monster Hunter is a live service game, it actually is. It's just not monetized like one. Monster Hunter Rise has seen updates every more or less 2 or 3 months since, and they've been drastically adding a substantial amount of content and upgrading the game. So that might be it. The last one is Studio London, right? Studio London have been staffing up for a PS5 online game. That's apparently some sort of MMO light in a fantasy setting, but that's definitely far away. That was, let's see, in January this year, they were building a team from the ground up, so we won't even expect that to maybe 2024, 2025. There is potentially Haven Studios, that's the Jade Raymond studio. They're working on a persistent and evolving online game that will apparently push the PS5 hard enough that Mark Cerny's tech team is involved. When the actual system engineer who built the whole thing and has basically been building PlayStation since, I think, the PS1 days, maybe PS2 days. That's kind of crazy. But the core takeaway here is, of course, that they have put a lot of time, a lot of money and a lot of resources, because obviously time and money are one thing, but resources of like, hey, if you're getting Jade Raymond, who's, prolific and known for these great games, if you're putting that team onto a live service, that's them not working on a single player game that should be there. So this is a substantial bet on live services from Sony that has been completely unproven. And I think recently we've seen almost more live service failures than anything else. Hello, Babylon's Fall. It's all about commitment, right? Will they be willing to put the consistent time, resources, and money into this to make these actually happen, make these good? Or is it going to be a case of get it out the door too quickly and then you're not willing to actually do the hard work to fix it, like happened with EA and Anthem? That's something that time will have to tell, but I think it comes down to they have a Call of Duty shaped hole and they need to start actually building the replacement to that now. In fact, they probably should have started building the replacement to that a number of years ago, because obviously Microsoft and their acquisition hungry ways was always going to end up this way. But unfortunately, there's been a deviation from their plans. Deviation Games CCO Jason Blundell left the company, but that's just one person leaving the team, especially a studio that hasn't actually released anything yet. Then you go into the full context for how this actually impacts their plans, because Jason Blundell and Dave Anthony founded Deviation Games back in 2020. They were very, very big names, being directors and head of Treyarch and game director on basically Black Ops 1, 2, 3, and 4 in some capacity. And you immediately go, oh, there's your Call of Duty replacement. That's it. That's the key. You're nurturing the golden goose now, and that's what's going to carry you on. So they brought a massive amount of people from Activision, especially. We all remember how Activision was a couple years ago, right? We all remember that. Obviously, if you've got PlayStation money and also the credibility of being ex-Treyarch, you will just get to pick, have your pick of the litter. You'll be able to send an email to hundreds of Call of Duty developers and go, hey, we can pay you 20% more and you'll not be working on Call of Duty. It'll be kind of like Call of Duty, but it won't actually be Call of Duty. Would you like that? And obviously that's going to be a massive victory for them. So the entire world was in their hands of the new Call of Duty competitor, but it was never actually announced. It was never revealed. I don't even think we literally know for sure that it was that, but obviously it was going to be. If you had money, you would put it on that. Absolutely. But that's now gone kind of wrong because Blundell sort of left and no one really knows why. Our read here is that he might be the canary in the coal mine, because according to a couple of different accounts, a few different people across different forums, the studio is a revolving door, and that is it's described here as a mass exodus, which means something's gone wrong with production, something's gone wrong with the idea, with how they're being treated, with how things are going. The staff are all leaving, which means that Sony's great ambition, their great live service, which is, hey, we will fill the Call of Duty shaped hole, we will absolutely solve this problem, we'll get live services, we'll be making so much money, we'll be printing money, we'll be able to kill Microsoft and Activision, off we go to the races. That's their first step, seems to be going a little bit wrong, which, as I said at the top of the video, if you're like me and love to hate Sony just a little bit, then there's a nice element of schadenfreude there. I'll tell you what it is, right? It is that idea of, we know live services suck. We know, okay, so there's a lot of them that are actually well executed, and there's a lot of them that are, reasonably enough, like player friendly, along the likes of like Apex at its best, not at its worst. I think as gamers, we all know that it doesn't feel right? You get almost just bad vibes from them, and we've seen all the ways have gone wrong. We even look at, say, Overwatch 2, right? And Overwatch 2 just released. It's fine. People are like, oh yeah, this is a different game, this is fine, whatever. But people are just reporting en masse that it feels worse to play. There are less features. And it's free to play. Okay, sure. They're selling skins that you could get for a minimum of effort back in Overwatch 1 for like 8 to 10 quid, or about $10 worth of Overwatch coins. Skins that basically they've been in the game for forever. And obviously Overwatch players are going to have them, but the takeaway from Overwatch 2 is live service doesn't always mean this is going to be a better experience for players. That might change whenever it comes to the amount of investment they'll be able to put in, the amount of developers have been able to buy, how quick the content kitten is. But ultimately, people are reporting, at least from the start, this feels worse because it's a free-to-play live service. You look at Halo Infinite, free-to-play live service-ified, that went horribly wrong. All of like the reward systems for how you play the game and how you feel about playing the game are corrupted in these live services because they ultimately are just, can we get you, okay, time to bust out the Andrew Wilson quote again. I don't remember it word for word, but it is the, you know, minutes engaged and money spent correlate on an almost one-to-one basis. So this is this idea of, it's no longer about, yeah, this is the best way to put it. Live services turn games from being, hey, are you satisfied with your experience, to are you playing as much as humanly possible? And I think we can all see exactly how, if that's the incentive of the game developer, that's not going to work very well. It's pretty much deeply frustrating. I know it's kind of turned into a rant about live services, but this is one part of Sony's massive push. They're going to go, can we turn like 49%, I believe Jim Ryan said, 49% of their investment for fiscal year 2022 is in live services. That means half of that's basically half of their effort is going into making those games, which are more deeply monetizable, which is, you know, they said it will never come at the expense of their single player titles, but it's still, you know, if you have 50% of your money going to live services, that's 50% of your money that could be going elsewhere. That's 50% of your money that could be going into more single player titles or bigger ones. Stuff like Spider-Man and God of War. Well, there's a little God of War, some problems with, but like Spider-Man and God of War, especially how Ragnarok looks with the combat, they're like really pushing games forward in the way that we love to see, right? God of War Ragnarok is another example of, we're doing the single player narrative, but we're kind of tired of them being movie games. We're kind of tired of them being, you know, just walk and talk simulators. We're actually making sure that there's really well paced out gameplay. There's an open world that you can explore. There's all of those good video game elements in it. But now if they're institutional focus, especially if things are going wrong with Deviation, then you're going to have people, you're going to have Herman Hulst have to go, okay, right, well, I have to, you know, sorry, Naughty Dog, sorry, Insomniac, sorry, Sucker Punch, sorry, Santa Monica, I'm going to have to delay all my meetings for this week to go put the live service fire out. I mean, you can see it, right? The incentives will move that way very slowly. And this is like full doomerism, worst case scenario. But you can see how it's going to go that way. You're like, it would be a better future if they put all of their effort into making the single player game better. But they're in the game to make money, right? They're in the game to make games, of course, but they're also in there to make money. And live services, unless you make a mistake like they did with Babylon's Fall, like EA did with Anthem, like Ubisoft have done with everything, unless you make mistakes like that, if you do the right job, they will print infinite money. And that's kind of it for the video, to be honest. Sony are going into live services. Their plans are failing. PC's going to have games a year after the actual launch, but live services day and date. Yeah. I've kind of upset myself now a little bit thinking about it this way, but as long as they make sure they have decent quality like Apex, because that's one of the, I mean, even Fortnite, honestly, there's a quality to those games. You go, okay, you get to be live services asterisk are kind of good. So as long as they stick to that, and as long as their claim that it doesn't come at the expense of the single player games actually stands, then we should be okay. It's just, if that 49% of money went to actually remake or remaster or even just patch Bloodborne instead, I think we'd all be a lot happier. Thank you very much for watching. Tune in, I guess, tomorrow for more videos and more news. Hopefully not as doomer as this one, and I'll see you next time.